Hello and welcome back to Doing Business in Europe. Today we're in Finland, in Helsinki, and we have the pleasure of meeting Martin Seppala, who is the CEO of Excedea.
Yes, hello, I'm Martin Seppala, I'm CEO of consulting company Excedea. And Excedea, our company, is focused on investment advisory and strategy consulting in Eastern Europe. The company is based in Estonia, owned by two Finns, myself and my business partner. And during the last 3-4 years we've done some 70 projects in 15 Eastern European countries. So Eastern Europe for us means countries from the Baltics to Russia, Bulgaria, Romania, and all the way even to some projects in Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan. My personal background is in management consulting internationally, so I worked for 11 years now as a management consultant. Previously with Anderson Consulting and Accenture, working quite a lot here in Helsinki, also a lot in Stockholm, in the Baltic countries, and in London as well in the UK.
Thanks, Martin. From what I understand, your company is registered in Estonia. Could you give us a bit of insight into why that is so? Why is Estonia your chosen location?
Well, Estonia, for us as Finns and as our main markets are in Sweden and Finland, is of course it's very close. It's very close to our main market, so it's easy to serve clients from there. But also it's within the EU area, so it brings certain benefits in billing and so on. But also it's a very business-friendly country within the EU, both in terms of setting up business, in terms of taxation, in terms of administration, and also costs. For us it was also important, as we are doing business in a lot of Russian-speaking countries, both within the EU and outside of the EU, that we can find Russian-speaking staff, which was more easily available in Estonia than in Finland.
So for your clients that ask you to help them in business development across Europe and into the very eastern part of Europe, what type of typical recommendations would you give them for market expansion and improvement of their investments and their performance in those eastern countries?
Typically we start by saying that you should know the markets, because there are quite a lot of differences between the markets, of course, both within the EU, but then especially if we go a bit further. So analyzing them properly and really knowing the local peculiarities is very important. Second, of course, is control. So both if you have a joint venture or whatever setup you have there, control is very important. Owning over 51%, over 75%, whatever is the hurdle in the country. Also, many times having de facto control over your employees, so not leaving any local manager alone, especially in the high corruption countries, but really having someone from the mother company who is supervising the local management is quite important.
Right. Knowing this, would you see differences in those companies that invest in the EU and that invest in non-EU countries in terms of risk, uncertainty, in terms of those control mechanisms that you are using or that those clients of yours are using?
Yes, absolutely. I would say that there is a difference, and of course there is a big difference within the EU and Eastern European countries as well. But as a rule of thumb, I would say that it's more important outside of the EU to have these control mechanisms. Maybe the most obvious reason for that is that within the EU there are still certain common rules and certain possibilities to appeal if there are some real legal problems, whereas in countries outside of the EU the company is more on their own. As an example, also the information and the quality, reliability of the information which is available in non-EU countries and perhaps even the less developed EU countries is that the quality information is worse. And it means in our business, for example, as we are for our clients analyzing statistics information, customs information and so on, it's not reliable. For example, in the Ukraine we have had examples where products like car tires are being imported through customs as rubber gloves or rubber boots or what have you, to avoid heavy customs duties on tires. And that's an example of a sort of grey imports, which means more uncertainty and which requires then more control in everything you do.
Thanks, Martin. You were talking about having moved that company into Estonia. So there is a flow of knowledge actually that goes from Finland or from Scandinavia altogether into the Baltic countries. Can you talk a bit about these dynamics, and also vice versa? Are these dynamics concerning the Baltic countries, Estonia for example, into Finland?
Yes, it's true that it's quite a lot of companies that are establishing, especially subsidiaries, but also a lot of Finnish and Swedish people with high education that are establishing their companies in Estonia. So there's for sure this type of trend going on. On the other hand, there is a certain business exchange the other way around as well. Of course, as Estonia is clearly a more low-cost country than Finland or, for example, Sweden, it means that a lot of labor-intensive work is being done by Estonians in the Nordic countries. But also there are especially some IT companies in Estonia that are exporting and being more and more active in the Nordic countries. So it's quite a lot of business going back and forth, and it's increasing all the time, I would say.
Speaking of it, do you note any particular investment flows? Could you, over the last years, see how FDI, for example, went more into some countries than other, and what would be the future of FDI from what you can observe within and without the European Union?
Yes, we absolutely see quite clear trends in our work. Some 5 years ago it was the Orange Revolution in Ukraine, which was very Western-minded, and that meant that a lot of Western investors turned their focus on Ukraine. 2007, when Romania and Bulgaria joined the EU, that meant that many investors and companies were interested in investing there because they felt that there was it had a positive impact on those countries. I think now for the future, especially now we're seeing that Belarus, which is sort of the final frontier in many ways of Eastern Europe, is opening up and attracting a lot of investment. So that is a clear trend now, I would say. And also then the countries a bit further ahead from Europe, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, maybe Georgia, if they recover as well, are interesting.
So how strategic from a European perspective are those very Eastern European countries for further business development of our companies?
Yes, absolutely. There is a difference between the companies and their size and so on in terms of how strategic Eastern Europe is for them. Some very big European companies are of course looking at India and China because they have multi-billion-dollar businesses, but especially if we're going a bit smaller, a bit more local businesses, for example food production and so on, we're talking about companies in the size of some 100 million euros, some billion euros in revenue. For them, countries like Russia and Ukraine and so on are very important.